On a storm-lashed night 18 years ago, billionaire Leonard Vance cast a sealed box into the wild waters of the Arden River, a box containing the twin sons he swore the world would never know. He thought the current would erase his betrayal. He thought the past would drown quietly. He was wrong. Now two voices rise from the shadows of his perfect life. Two sons he left to die. Two forces he cannot control, and as his empire begins to crumble from within, shattered by invisible hands, Leonard faces a terrifying truth. The river never forgets, and neither do the ones you tried to destroy. But when vengeance is within reach, Noah and Luca Rowan will uncover a devastating secret. Their mother, the woman they believed lost to tragedy, may have been the mastermind all along. As the past collides with the present, loyalty, truth, and blood will be tested, and the final choice will not be about revenge, but about survival. The rain fell in thick, heavy sheets, battering the Arden River until the surface boiled with rage. Thunder cracked above, shaking the ground beneath Leonard Vance's polished leather shoes. He stood motionless at the riverbank, a dark silhouette against the flickering night, the crate in his arms heavier than it should have been. Inside the box, two tiny beings slept under sedation, oblivious to the chaos around them. "Sir," Matthews, his driver, called from the car, his voice barely carrying over the storm. "We should hurry." Leonard tightened his grip on the crate, his jaw clenched. This wasn't a decision, it was a necessity. His empire, his future, depended on erasing this mistake. "No second chances," Leonard muttered to himself. Then, without another thought, he stepped closer to the water's edge. The river roared, hungry. Leonard hesitated just once as a flash of lightning illuminated the tiny air holes punched into the crate's lid. A whimper, almost too soft to hear, rose from inside. Another step. He extended his arms, released the crate. It hit the water with a muted splash, bobbed once, twice, then was pulled under by the current, vanishing into the blackness. Leonard turned, his coat whipping around him in the wind, and marched back to the car. Matthews opened the door without a word. Inside, the warmth of the leather seats did nothing to thaw the chill seeping into Leonard's bones. He didn't look back. "Drive," he commanded. As the car pulled away, the river behind him swallowed a secret it would not easily forget. Hours passed. The storm began to retreat, leaving only mist and swollen banks. Beneath the turbulent surface, the crate tumbled helplessly downstream. It slammed against a jagged rock hidden beneath the water. A hairline fracture split one of the seals, and a thin stream of water seeped in. Yet instead of sinking, a small miracle occurred. A trapped pocket of air formed, keeping the crate buoyant, if barely. The current shifted, carrying the battered box away from the cities, the industrial docks, and into the forgotten marshes and dense forests that few dared to enter. Above the river, dawn teased the horizon with a faint promise of light. The crate drifted toward salvation. Silas Rowan woke before sunrise, as he always did. He pulled on his worn boots and grabbed his fishing spear, stepping into the cool pre-dawn air. The river, his old companion, murmured softly nearby. He walked the muddy path, squinting against the lingering mist. Something unnatural caught his eye. Among the reeds, a shape where no debris should be. "Miriam," he called over his shoulder. From their modest cabin, a small figure appeared. Miriam Rowan, her grey-streaked hair tied in a tight braid. She wiped her hands on her apron and hurried to meet him. "What is it?" she asked, voice tinged with concern. Silas didn't answer immediately. He waded into the shallow water and pulled at the object lodged between two stones. The crate groaned, but shifted. Together, they hauled it onto the muddy bank. "Dear God," Miriam whispered, seeing the small blankets inside through the cracked lid. With trembling hands, she worked the latches open. The lid fell back, and two tiny faces, pale and still, stared up at them. Their breathing, Miriam cried, dropping to her knees. Her fingers sought tiny pulses, weak but there. One of the babies whimpered, a fragile sound that cut through the morning stillness like a blade. Silas knelt beside her, his weathered hand resting gently on one of the infants. "Someone tried to kill them," he said, voice low. "We can't leave them," Miriam said fiercely. "We don't even know who they are." "It doesn't matter. They're ours now." The river gurgled behind them as if sealing the pact. The fire crackled inside the Rowan cabin, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Miriam rocked in her chair, cradling the twins against her chest, wrapped in the warmest blankets they owned. Silas paced before the hearth, hands clenching and unclenching. "If we go to the authorities," he said, "they'll be taken away, separated, shoved into the system, or sent back to whoever did this," Miriam snapped, tears shining in her eyes. The fire popped, throwing sparks upward. "Miriam," Silas said, his voice softening, "this isn't just taking in a stray dog. We're talking about hiding children, maybe from powerful people, dangerous ones." "You felt it too," she said, looking up at him. "The moment you touch them, they're meant to be here, with us." Silas exhaled, the fight draining from him. He crossed the room, knelt before her and touched one of the sleeping boys. "What will we call them?" he asked finally. Miriam smiled through her tears. "Noah," she said, touching the quieter twin. "And Luca," she said, shifting to the more restless one. "Noah and Luca Rowan," Silas repeated, tasting the names. He sat back on his heels, listening to the fire, the river, the heartbeat of their new secret family. Later that evening, under a sky streaked with bruised purple clouds, Silas and Miriam stood once again at the riverbank. The boys, bundled tightly in Miriam's arms, slept peacefully, oblivious to the world. Silas had carved two tiny totems from wood, a hawk for strength and a river for resilience. He tied the tiny carvings with leather cords around the boys' wrists. "We can't erase where they came from," Silas said, voice rough, "but we can give them a future." Miriam nodded, cradling them close. "A future better than the past that tried to acclaim them." The river whispered at their feet, washing away the blood ties that sought to drag the twins down and baptizing them into a new life instead. Silas dipped a hand into the river, then gently touched the boys' foreheads, murmuring a blessing of protection he barely remembered from his own youth. As the last light faded, the Rowans turned back toward their cabin, two tiny souls now fully theirs, bound not by blood, but by choice. And far, far down the river, in the city of cold steel and colder hearts, Leonard Vance slept soundly, blissfully unaware that the past he had tried to drown had just been reborn. The sun filtered through the pines in slanted beams of gold, catching the mist that curled off the river. Noah and Luca, now 7 years old, crouched in the underbrush, their bodies still and eyes sharp. Silas Rowan stood behind them, towering like an old oak, his voice a low rumble. "Tell me what you see." Luca's hand shot up eagerly. "Deer tracks, fresh, headed east, toward the water." Silas nodded once. "And Noah?" Noah's eyes swept the ground, missing nothing. "Broken twigs, no more than half an hour old. There's something bigger, too. Bear, maybe." "Good," Silas said. Now, he reached down, brushing away some leaves. "Tell me what you missed." Beneath the disturbed dirt was a faint boot print, far too large to belong to either boy. Luca's brow furrowed. "Someone's been here. And not long ago," Noah added, voice tight. Silas let the silence, letting them feel the weight of it. "Out here," he said finally, "your life depends on seeing what others overlook." He clapped a hand on each boy's shoulder, firm and proud. "Now, let's finish setting the traps." As they moved through the woods, Noah's mind filed away every lesson, every detail. Luca, more restless, kept glancing toward the invisible line where the forest met the horizon, where the world waited. Later that evening, the Rowan cabin glowed with warmth. Miriam stirred a pot over the fire, humming a song half forgotten. The boys played quietly by the hearth, carving figures from soft riverwood. "Stay still, Luca," Noah muttered, holding a carving knife. "You'll slice your thumb." "I don't want to carve," Luca grumbled, tossing the half-finished bird aside. "I want to see the town." Silas, sharpening his axe near the door, looked up sharply. "We've talked about this," he said. "Town's no place for you." "But why?" Luca demanded, standing. "What's out there that's so dangerous?" Miriam's ladle clattered against the pot. Silas's mouth became a thin line. Noah rose, putting a hand on his brother's arm. "Luca, not tonight." But the words had been spoken. The cabin, once warm, now felt tight, stifling. Luca sat again, reluctantly, but his gaze stayed fixed on the black window panes, on the invisible road that wound toward the unknown. The question hung between them like smoke. What was so wrong with the world beyond the woods? Weeks passed, but the restlessness grew. One afternoon, while Silas and Miriam were in town trading furs, Luca dragged Noah to the old storage shed behind the cabin. "Help me," Luca whispered, pushing aside crates and old hunting gear. "I know it's here." "What are you looking for?" Noah hissed. "A radio. I saw Silas stash it years ago." After frantic searching, Luca unearthed a battered, dust-covered shortwave set. "You know they'd skin us if they found out," Noah warned. "Then don't tell them." Using spare batteries pilfered from an old lantern, Luca rigged the set to life. The speaker crackled, hissing bursts of static into the musty air. Noah leaned in despite himself, curiosity prickling his skin. They turned the dial carefully, catching snatches of distant voices. "Leonard Vance's empire continues to expand." Noah froze. Luca's hand tightened on the radio. "What did they say?" Luca asked, voice hoarse. Noah adjusted the tuner, but the voice faded into static. "Leonard Vance." The name lodged itself in their minds like a splinter. Neither boy spoke. They simply stared at each other in the flickering light, the static humming between them like a ghost. That night, as rain tapped the cabin roof, Noah tossed in his narrow bed. The radio was hidden again, but the name lingered, refusing to be buried. Noah thought of Silas's hard eyes, Miriam's quick glances, the way questions about the outside world were always brushed away. Luca rolled over in the darkness. "You awake?" "Yeah." Luca's voice was little, more than a breath. "You heard it too." "I did." "Do you think—" Luca hesitated. "Do you think we're not really their sons?" Noah's chest tightened painfully. "I don't know." Footsteps creaked on the stairs. Silas doing his nightly rounds. The boys fell silent, feigning sleep, but inside something had broken loose. They would not stop until they knew the truth. Days later, after chores and lessons, Noah and Luca stole back to the riverbank. It was twilight, and the mist curled low to the ground. Kneeling in the damp earth, they dug a shallow hole between the roots of a great oak. Inside, they placed a new notebook, U-2014 blank, leather-bound U-2014, and a small bundle of tools, a pen, a scavenged compass, scraps of maps. Their first cache, their first step. Noah pressed the notebook into the earth and looked at his brother. "We'll find out," he said. "No matter what," Luca added. They clasped wrists in silent vow. Above them, the stars began to blink into existence, one by one, bearing witness to a promise that could not be undone. The river whispered nearby, carrying their words out into the vastness of the world they had never seen. And so it began. The snow had begun to fall early this year, dusting the forest in a soft white silence. Inside the Rowan cabin, the fire snapped and crackled, but it wasn't enough to thaw the cold tension between Noah and Luca. Noah sat at the kitchen table, old newspaper clippings spread before him. Luca paced the room like a caged animal, his booted feet scuffing the wooden floor. "There's nothing," Noah muttered, shoving aside another crumbling article. "Nothing about us. Nothing about a missing woman named Amara. Nothing about abandoned children." "There has to be," Luca snapped. "People don't just disappear without someone noticing." "Apparently they do." Miriam entered quietly, setting a kettle over the fire. Her eyes lingered on the papers, on her boys, and then looked away. Silas remained outside, splitting wood, pretending not to hear the rising desperation inside. We're not going to find answers here, Luca said, his voice hardening. We need to go further. Town records, hospital archives. Noah looked at him sharply. And how do you propose we do that without getting caught? We're ghosts, Luca. We're not supposed to exist. That's the point, Luca said fiercely. We deserve to know why. In the corner, Miriam stirred the fire, her shoulders tight. Neither brother noticed the way her hands trembled. The opportunity came in the most ordinary way, a splinter. While chopping kindling near the river, Luca drove a sharp sliver deep into his palm. It swelled, red and angry by nightfall. You'll need antibiotics, Miriam said, inspecting the wound. We'll have to take you into Miller's Creek. Luca caught Noah's eye, a silent agreement passing between them. They rode into town before dawn, bundled in coats, hats pulled low. The clinic was small, with worn linoleum floors and flickering fluorescent lights. A nurse took Luca's blood sample to check for infection. She returned minutes later, pale and rattled. Strange, she muttered, peering at her screen. You have a match in the genetic database, a high-profile one. Silas tensed. We're not interested in databases, just treat the infection. The nurse hesitated but nodded, clearly unsettled. Noah pretended not to notice, but he saw the name flash briefly on the screen before it disappeared. Leonard Vance. His blood turned to ice. Later, while Luca dozed under the effects of antibiotics, Noah slipped into the hallway. He found a discarded printout in the trash. Leonard Vance, patient match, 99.87% probability. He crumpled the paper in his fist, heart hammering. Their past had a name now, and it was a name powerful enough to bury the truth, and them, forever. Back at the cabin, the fire was low, and the storm outside raged against the windows. Silas sat sharpening a blade. Miriam sewed quietly, her needle flashing silver in the firelight. Noah stood before them, the crumpled paper clutched in his hand. Tell us, he said, now. Silas didn't look up. There's nothing to tell. We found a match, Luca added, stepping forward. His voice cracked slightly. Leonard Vance. That's who we're connected to, isn't it? Miriam's hands faltered in her sewing. Silas finally set down the blade. His face was a map of every hard choice he had ever made. We found you in the river, he said. That's all that matters. No, it's not, Noah exploded. You knew, you've always known. Silas rose slowly, towering over them, but his voice remained low. We knew enough to protect you, but not enough to tell us the truth? Luca asked, voice shaking. Silas looked at him then, really looked. We saved you from a world that didn't want you, he said. That was enough for us. It had to be. Silence stretched thick between them, broken only by the wind shrieking through the trees. Finally, Noah turned away, his fists clenched. If Silas and Miriam wouldn't give them answers, they would find them themselves, no matter the cost. The attic above the cabin smelled of dust and old pine. It was here that Noah and Luca built their shrine to the past. An old leather-bound notebook scavenged from Miriam's teaching days became their journal of truth. Noah wrote neatly, methodically, listing everything they knew. Date of discovery, winter, year 0. Location, Arden River, North Bend. Guardian names, Silas and Miriam Rowan. Blood match, Leonard Vance. Luca sketched maps of the area, marking routes to town, to the city, to potential records offices. Every name they heard on the radio, every scrap of gossip from town trips, was recorded. Their walls became a patchwork of clues. A newspaper clipping here, a hand-drawn family tree there, photos taken in secret during rare town visits. At night, by the dim light of an oil lamp, they pored over it all, piecing together a life they had never lived. A life stolen from them. One evening, Luca looked up from a sheaf of notes. He's not just some businessman, he said. Leonard Vance owns half the city. Real estate, tech firms, even media companies. Noah nodded grimly. Which means he owns the story of our lives, too. Not for much longer, Luca said, his voice dark with promise. Noah looked at his brother across the sea of papers and silent questions. They were no longer just boys. They were hunters, and their quarry had a name. Winter tightened. Its grip on the forest. Ice glazed the river, and the trees stood like frozen sentinels. Inside the cabin, preparations accelerated. Silas and Miriam watched from the sidelines, powerless to stop it. The twins trained harder, thought faster, grew sharper. They no longer asked permission. They no longer waited for answers. At the kitchen table, the final plan took shape. "First, we gather intelligence," Noah said, tapping the map with a pencil. "No confrontations, no mistakes. We find his weaknesses," Luca added. "We make him feel what it's like to be hunted." Silas cleared his throat. "You're talking about starting a war." Noah met his gaze, steady and cold. "No, we're finishing one." Outside, the river groaned under the weight of ice, whispering warnings that no one heard. As night fell, the Rowan cabin seemed smaller than ever, a temporary shelter against the rising storm. In the darkness, Noah and Luca sat side by side, sharpening their minds, their bodies, and their will. Ahead of them loomed the impossible task, dismantling the life of the man who had tried to drown them before he could do it again. They closed the notebook, sealing the final piece of their old lives behind them. Ahead was only the future, and Leonard Vance would not see them coming. The cold glow of the laptop screen lit Noah's face as he looked late into the night, his fingers down across the keyboard, piecing together the framework of something he had never dared attempt before. Echo, "You really gonna build it?" Luca asked, standing up in that tiny rented room, arms crossed. "We have no choice," Noah replied. "We can't fight him in the open. We need to be invisible." Echo, "Let us listen without leaving fingerprints." Luca moved closer, watching live scroll past. No internet, no cloud backups. Everything local, self-contained, air-gapped from any system that can be traced. How will it work? Signal interception, data scraping, device hijacking, standard diagnostics. It'll be like breathing inside his lungs without him knowing. Whispering his breath. "You're scary sometimes, you know that." Noah cracked a small smile. "Good. We'll need to be." Above them, in the dark city skyline, the Vance Corporation's glass tower gleamed under the stars, a fortress waiting to be infiltrated. 2 weeks later, under the neon haze of the city's crowded streets, Noah and Luca moved through a cheap internet cafe. The place smelled of burnt coffee and desperation, a perfect cover. On a battered computer, Noah pulled up a series of government databases through proxies he'd built into Echo. He nodded at Luca. Time to meet Daniel and Marcus Finch. Using carefully constructed fake documents, they built entire lives for their new identities. Forged school transcripts, fictional work histories, even fake social media accounts populated with years of fabricated memories, photoshopped images of camping trips, science fairs, fake friends with fake comments. "Feels weird," Luca said, watching his new online life blossom with a few keystrokes. "It has to look real. We don't just exist now. We've always existed," Noah replied. Once finished, they submitted polished resumes to the Vance Corporation's hiring portal, targeting a division under the pretense of needing IT security consultants. All they could do now was wait. 3 days later, an email arrived. "Congratulations, Daniel Finch and Marcus Finch. You've been selected for on-site interviews at Vance Industries." Noah and Luca exchanged a long, silent look. The first gate had opened. The Vance Industries tower loomed over them as they approached, sharp suits disguising their battle-ready nerves. Security was tight, facial scans, bag checks, RFID tag assignments, but their credentials held. A bored receptionist waved them through to an elevator lined with mirrored walls. As the doors closed, Noah caught Luca's reflection, jaw tight, hands flexing at his sides. "You okay?" Noah murmured. "Just thinking about what he did," Luca said, "and how close we are now." The elevator dinged. A middle-aged man with thinning hair and a harried expression greeted them. "Peterson, IT supervisor, you're with me." The tour was brisk. Server rooms, diagnostic stations, back-end hubs. Noah memorized everything. The angles of cameras, the placement of emergency exits. At a nondescript workstation, Peterson finally said, "Get set up. You're scheduled for preliminary audits starting tomorrow." They nodded, playing the roles of diligent contractors. But beneath their desks, inside innocuous thumb drives disguised as standard diagnostics tools, Echo began slipping into the network, laying down silent roots. Every keystroke, every server handshake, every blind spot, mapped, recorded, owned. By day's end, Noah and Luca were no longer outsiders. They were inside the beating heart of Leonard Vance's empire. Night had fallen by the time they returned to their rented room. Noah immediately connected to their offline machine. Data streamed in, encrypted emails, financial records, schedules, personal device connections. "Look at this," Noah said, pulling up a heat map of the mansion's internal network. Luca peered over his shoulder. "Smart locks, climate controls, internal cameras. It's all one system. And now we have the keys," Noah said grimly. They had planned it perfectly. Inside the Vance smart systems, Echo embedded tiny back doors, hidden entry points that would grant them full control later. "We're ghosts inside his machine now," Luca said. "And he doesn't even know he's already bleeding," Noah added. They sat in silence for a moment, staring at the map of Leonard's life laid bare before them. It was working. Every secret he thought locked away was now slipping into their hands. And it was only the beginning. 2 nights later, from their tiny room overlooking the city's neon veins, Noah completed the final phase. He tapped the last command into their laptop. On the screen, a new notification appeared. Noah leaned back, exhaling slowly. "It's done," he said. Luca grinned, his first real smile in weeks. "Now what?" Noah's face hardened. "Now we pull the first thread." With a few keystrokes, they activated the first passive leaks, small discrepancies in Vance's offshore accounts, minor tampering with internal communications, just enough to make the walls of his empire creak. Not to destroy him, not yet, but to wake him up. They wanted Leonard Vance to feel the same dread they had lived with for 18 years. Luca leaned closer to the window, staring at the Vance Tower's distant silhouette. "He won't know it's us," he whispered. "He'll just know," Noah said, "that his ghosts are coming." Behind them, Echo hummed softly, alive and patient. The trap was set, and there would be no escape. The marble floors of Vance Manor gleamed under the muted evening lights. Leonard Vance strode through the silent halls, shedding his coat and gloves, exhaustion weighing heavy after another fruitless week of crisis management. As he stepped into his study, the room plunged into darkness. The lights flickered, and every screen in the house, the TVs, the monitors, even his phone, sputtered to life on their own. First static, then images. At first, Leonard thought it was a glitch, until he saw himself, standing at the river's edge, holding the crate, dropping it into the black water. His chest tightened. "No!" he whispered. A voice crackled through the speakers, soft, feminine, ghostly. "Welcome home, Leonard." It was Amara's voice. Leonard staggered back, his heart hammering in his chest. "Impossible," he hissed. Across every screen, images of hidden accounts, offshore properties, falsified hospital records danced like mocking spirits. The ghosts he thought he'd buried had returned, and they knew everything. Later that night, the private line at Leonard's desk buzzed sharply, cutting through the heavy silence. He hesitated, then answered. A pause, then 2 voices, weaving together like a blade and its hilt. "Good evening, Leonard," said the first, measured, cold. "Recognize us?" asked the second, sharper, burning with restrained fury. Leonard's throat closed. "Who are you?" he rasped, though the answer clawed at the edges of his mind. "We are the sons you tried to forget." Leonard staggered back, as if struck. "This is a mistake," he managed. "You're lying. 18 years ago, the first voice said, you threw your sons into the Arden River. You thought the current would carry us away. You were wrong, the second voice said. And now, We're the current. A crackling silence followed. Leonard gripped the desk with both hands, his knuckles whitening. "What do you want?" "Justice," they said together. "Not revenge. Justice." The line went dead, and Leonard Vance knew, for the first time in his life, what it felt like to be hunted. The fuck. Next morning, Noah and Luca sat in the back corner of Café Blue, their backs to the wall, every exit mapped. Across from them sat Mira Solis, sleek, composed, but with eyes that burned with too much knowledge. "You were there," Noah said. "Not a question. At the beginning." Mira nodded, folding her hands atop the table. "I was your mother's sister," she said quietly. "I was there when you were born and when you were lost." Luca leaned forward, voice tight. "Why didn't you find us sooner?" "I tried," Mira said, her voice breaking for the first time. "But Leonard buried the trail so deep. Even I almost believed you were gone." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Your mother knew she wouldn't survive Leonard's betrayal. She left this for you." Noah took it, feeling the weight of the past between his fingers. "What's in it?" Luca demanded. Mira's gaze was steady. The truth. In the dim light of their apartment, Noah broke the wax seal carefully. Reverently, the scent of aged paper filled the room. Amara's handwriting flowed across the page, steady and strong. "My beloved sons, if you are reading this, then the impossible has happened. You survived. I need you to know I never abandoned you. I never gave up on you. I did what I had to do to save you, even if it meant becoming the villain in your father's eyes and perhaps yours." Luca's hand tightened into a fist. "I orchestrated it all. I made Leonard believe you were dead. I made the world forget you ever existed." Noah's breath caught as he read the next lines. "Leonard was dangerous. He would have used you, broken you, just as he broke everything pure he ever touched. I had to disappear so you could have a chance to live free. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped believing in the river to bring you back." Tears blurred Noah's vision. Luca turned away, his shoulders rigid. Their mother hadn't been a victim. She had been the architect of their survival. Later that night, Noah and Luca stood on the rooftop of their apartment building, the city sprawling in neon chaos below them. The letter lay between them, weighed down by a simple river stone. "She saved us," Luca said, his voice raw. "And he," Noah's jaw clenched, "he tried to erase us." "We could still expose him," Luca said. "Destroy everything, bring it all into the light." Noah looked up at the stars, silent witnesses to every choice made under them. "But if we do," he said, "we destroy her too. Her sacrifice, her plan." They stood in heavy silence, the wind whipping their jackets. Finally, Noah spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "We let him live with it. We let him remember." Luca met his brother's gaze, and for the first time since they had begun this journey, he nodded without anger, without fire, only understanding. They would not seek destruction. They would leave Leonard Vance broken, haunted, and forgotten, because some ghosts are punishment enough, and the river never forgets. The storm outside battered Leonard's isolated cabin. Inside, only the low hum of his old laptop broke the silence. He stared into the recording camera, his reflection broken. "This is Leonard Vance," he began to himself. "I am responsible." He confessed it all. The betrayal, the night of the Arden River, the countless cover-ups that followed, the empire, every word. When he finished, Leonard attached the video to an encrypted message. He addressed it only to two names he now spoke aloud for the first time in years. Luca, with a trembling hand, pressed send. The screen blinked once, turned to black. Leonard sat on the surface, the rain hammering against the window, and knew he had finally been seen, and nothing could save him now. Miles away, they crept overlooking the dying city. No one watched them in silence. Luca leaned against the window, arms crossed, his face unreadable. When the screen went dark, neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Noah closed the laptop gently, almost reverently. "That's it," he said quietly. Luca turned. "We could leak it." Noah shook his head. "He gave it to us freely, that's enough." "And us?" Luca asked. "What happens now?" "We disappear," Noah said simply. Within hours, they wiped every trace of their existence. Echo was dismantled, every drive shredded, every network severed. The forged IDs burned in the old sink. The fake. Histories curling into ash. By sunrise, they were gone. Ghosts once more. No trail, no names, no revenge. Only the clean, cold freedom of a life reclaimed. The river mist rose like forgotten memories as Noah and Luca stepped onto the creaking dock of the marina. There, by a small, weather-worn houseboat, stood Silas and Miriam. Silas's face was lined deeper with worry. Miriam clutched a faded scarf to her chest, her eyes brimming. Neither spoke as the twins approached. No words were needed. Miriam was the first to move, wrapping her arms tightly around both boys, squeezing fiercely. "You found the truth," she whispered. "We did," Luca said, his voice thick. "And you chose peace," Silas added, his voice rough with emotion. Noah nodded. "We chose not to be like him," he said. They boarded the houseboat together, the wood warm underfoot, the smell of river water and fresh bread filling the tiny cabin. Inside, a simple meal waited. Fish stew, hot tea, the kind of home-cooked silence that spoke louder than celebration. That night, they slept under the stars, the river singing them to dreams free of ghosts. At dawn, they gathered on the small deck. In Noah's hands was the last remaining photograph, the only proof that had survived all the years. It showed Leonard, Amara, and two tiny babies, a family that had never truly been. Without ceremony, Noah lit a match. The photo caught fire instantly, curling at the edges, blackening their frozen smiles. When only embers remained, he let the ash scatter into the river's mist. The past floated away, broken and free. Miriam stood between the boys, her hands resting on their shoulders. "You carry her spirit," she said softly, "and your own strength." Luca looked out over the endless river. "She gave us life," he said, "but we chose what to do with it." Silas nodded slowly, "And that choice makes all the difference." The current whispered along the hull, carrying the last remnants of the past out into the world. Leonard Vance sat in a battered chair outside his riverside cabin. The Arden River stretched before him, endless and indifferent. Each morning, he watched it flow. Each night, he listened to its voice. The confession had been sent. The empire had crumbled, not with an explosion, but with a slow, unnoticed rot. His name was fading, as surely as the colors in a weathered photograph. No court would prosecute him, no public would lynch him, but he lived with every memory, every loss, every choice, alone, forgotten. Some days, he almost imagined he saw two shadows by the riverbank, young men standing side by side, not accusing, just watching. Then they would disappear into the mist. Leonard would close his eyes, hearing the river's eternal whisper, and so he remained, anchored to the river, as it flowed on without him. While somewhere, beyond the edge of the world, Noah and Luca Rowan sailed toward a life that was finally, truly, their own. A life where the river's currents could no longer carry them back, only forward.